I don't know if we really saw what we needed to see from Desmond Ridder in 2023 to have a lot of confidence. Ritter's game logs didn't indicate that he was a volume passer. Now, maybe that's the offense that he's running, but still, is he going to be making the difference? I'm not convinced. He certainly doesn't do it on the ground. 3 of his 4 starts, he had fewer than 10 rushing yards. And he never eclipsed 225 passing yards, despite the fact that every game he threw for at least 26 attempts. Okay, so yes, like he was without Kyle Pitts for weeks 15 through 18, but still not getting the ball to Drake London effectively is going to make a difference. Desmond Ridder was quarterback 33 among all quarterbacks with at least 130 dropbacks in PFF passer grade. That was behind Marcus Mariota. That's not really making a difference. The difference with average depth of target, right? Mariota's was one of the highest in the NFL. Mariota was actually number 1 among all quarterbacks. Desmond Ridder, 17th. So that's not really going to make the difference. It's not. Ridder was much more accurate than Mariota. And Mariota versus Ridder in yards per attempt, Mariota was at 7.4. Ridder, you just keep scrolling, 6.2. Ridder was 38th out of 43 quarterbacks in yards per attempt. It's just, you didn't see what you wanted to see. There weren't indicators to tell us that Desmond Ridder, the 3rd round pick for the Falcons in 2022, is going to be any needle. So yes, I think he's going to compete in 2023 for the starting spot. But the Falcons are, I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons aggressively go after the quarterback position, understanding that Desmond Ridder's probably not going to be a starting quarterback. He's probably going to be a respectable backup quarterback. If you like the content and find it helpful, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. Ridder played okay, but he showed exactly what a backup quarterback would show when put into the role. Now, maybe getting summer snaps and maybe full first team reps throughout the summer and competing in that way. But really, it was Marcus Mariota's job in 2022 and Ridder really didn't get many first team snaps. So maybe that'll make a difference. Like, it's possible. Quarterbacks get better. My concern is that Ridder just didn't show us much in his time, in his 4 starts, weeks 15, 16, 17, and 18. He did improve in his PFF passer grade throughout the 4 games. In week 15 at 43, week 16, 52.5, week 17, 72.7, and week 18, 74.6. So at least we saw improvement, but I'm not sure if I saw enough to say, you know what, he is definitely going to be the starting quarterback in 2023. I don't think that door is closed. Desmond Ridder still has a lot to prove in 2023 for us to be comfortable even taking him as a super flex type of quarterback. And in best ball, like, you're taking him maybe if you're like a last round type of pick, really, but why are you wasting your picks? You should just consolidate. He's that type of quarterback that, like, in the Mac Jones level, where he's not going to shift the needle for you in the best ball streets. Right there, Mario or Ridder in his 4 starts only threw 2 passing touchdowns. It's not getting it done. Now, granted, again, Kyle Pitts was not there, but that's with Drake London as well. So I'm not super convinced, and you shouldn't be either. There shouldn't be a high level of love for Desmond Ridder. Any hype that comes out, even him being declared the starter, I'm not in on in 2020. Tyler Algier was the rookie surprise of 2022. Algier finished with over 1,000 rushing yards on the season. He played 16 games, 210 rush attempts, 4.9 yards per carry. He had 4 total touchdowns. He was the running back 31 in fantasy points per game, running back 29 in total fantasy points. And it really helped that the Atlanta Falcons ran the most. The Falcons were 32.6 team run plays per game, and they just kept giving Algier the volume, especially near the end of the season. We saw Algier over the last 4 games, each of those last 4 games, 17, 18, 20, and 20 attempts. And that's where he started really taking over. It was the last 3 games, Algier playing 62% of snaps or more. and finishing as the running back 8 or 16 or better each of the last 4 weeks. And I think he's getting a lot of early disrespect in the best ball streets. He's being drafted right now on Underdog as the running back 34 behind Khalil Herbert, behind Kareem Hunt, behind A.J. Dillon, behind Brian Robinson even. Give me Tyler Algier over those types of players. And you have to like what he's shown, and that's assuming that Cordarrelle Patterson starts to go away. Tyler Algier did what he needed to do to be an effective player out of the gate. Now, is he at risk for losing his job if another Atlanta Falcons running back comes in? Sure. Like any day 3 running back is a risky pick, but getting 1,000 yards, that's nice. It reminds me a little bit of Philip Lindsay, and Philip Lindsay gave you 2 solid years of running back production. And that's, I think, what we can get. We can squeeze, I think, 1 more year out of Tyler Algier, and that's going to be in 2023. I'm not convinced that he's going to be a long-term solution because his athletic measurables are simply not there. 4.6 40-yard dash, 36th percentile burst score, 45th agility score, but he's like a little faster Zach Moss, a little bit more athletic type of player there. He's capable of catching the ball out of the backfield, even though the Atlanta Falcons really didn't throw to him very much. But he's a really effective runner. Tyler Algier, 6th among all running backs with 175 rush attempts or more. He was 6th among running backs with an 88 run grade. Okay, only behind A.J. Dillon, Tony Pollard, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, and Josh Jacobs. What's really impressive is that Tyler Algier, 4th among running backs in yards after contact per attempt, only behind Tony Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson, and Derrick Henry. So for a player who only had 3 rushing touchdowns on the year, 4 total, you have to like what he's doing and how he held off Caleb Huntley near the end and pushed even Arthur Smith favorite Cordarrelle Patterson out of the way. So yeah, give me some Tyler Algier here in 2023. I think he's going to be a nice value for you in your 2023 drafts. If you pick an anchor RB1, he's going to be a nice solid RB2 for you, a volume-based RB2. And if the Atlanta Falcons upgrade their quarterback position, you can see an offense that's clicking a little bit better with wide receiver Drake London, with tight end Kyle Pitts, and with running back Tyler Algier, who played very effectively this year. So I'm comfortable taking Tyler Algier as a back-end running back 3. That's where he's valued at. I would be happy to take him at that draft position. It was hard to pin down when to start Cordarrelle Patterson after his injury, because in week 9 against the Chargers, he finished as the running back 7 and then, proceeded to finish outside of the top 20 of running backs until week 17. So it's troublesome because you hoped that Cordarrelle Patterson would hit some more spike weeks, but we saw that he could. It's simply that I don't know if Cordarrelle Patterson will be back in 2023. And maybe Patterson is back as a complimentary change of pace back for Tyler Algier. His dead cap is $3.75 million, so it's not nothing, and his cap hit is $5.5 million. It seems like the Atlanta Falcons coaching staff likes the veteran presence of the 32-year-old running back, because Cordarrelle Patterson will be 32 here in a couple months. 32-year-old that will contribute. And we saw him have some production and be a capable pass catcher near the end. 3 of his last 4 games, he had 3 targets. And we did see some spike weeks. So I think that Cordarrelle Patterson might be a nice best ball play relative to season long. I'm probably not going to draft him very much in 2023 season long unless we hear that Tyler Algier gets hurt in the offseason or something like that. But I think Cordarrelle Patterson does stick around. I think that the Atlanta Falcons coaching staff trusts him. And I think that he has spike week potential, even with the existence of Tyler Algier. Looking back on week 17 against Arizona, Cordarrelle Patterson, 50% of snaps, 9 carries, 6 receptions, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Like, that's still within his range of outcomes. This guy was drafted in the first round back in 2013, 10 years ago, but he still has super speed. He's, if used in the right way on sweeps and outs and outside the tackle type of runs, this is a player who can break free. So I could see Cordero Patterson sticking around, being a useful piece of this Atlanta Falcons, even if they are rebuilding, which they've taken steps here over the last couple of years to address positions and meet their needs. And there's a lot of needs in the Falcons, but if they're already planning to pay Cordero Patterson a ready penny, he's probably going to stick around. I don't think there are a lot of other teams that would be as interested in signing a Cordero Patterson, but we'll see. Certainly an interesting spike week type of player, but I wouldn't go out of my way and depend on him as a running back too. But if the right value falls for Cordero Patterson, I could see him being like an auto pick later on in the drafts. Right now, Cordero Patterson is being drafted as the running back 40, behind the likes of Chuba Hubbard, behind the likes of Donta Foreman, behind the likes of, we'll see where Alexander Madison lands, but if Madison lands a backup gig, like give me Cordero Patterson in that spot. So I like that. I like him ahead of Clyde. I like him ahead of Samaje Perine. So those are just some players to throw out that I like his spike week potential. You're not, as I said, banking on him as a running back too, but an interesting play moving into 2023. It's clear that Caleb Huntley fell out of favor with the Atlanta Falcons. I wouldn't be surprised if he's cut in the offseason. This was a player who was an undrafted free agent 2021 out of Ball State. He was a thumper, a grinder type of player, wasn't a prolific pass catcher at all, and he lost most of his run to Tyler Algier. Not an athlete by any means, ran a 4.82, fifth percentile 40-yard dash. He was a fourth percentile speed score type of player, 32nd percentile burst score. He wasn't very strong either. So it's clear that Algier just sucked away almost all of Huntley's usage. Looking at his game logs, Huntley didn't play week 16 and beyond. And even when he did from weeks 11 through 15, didn't even eclipse 10% of the snaps. Yeah, the long gone are the days that Caleb Huntley could have been a deep league consideration. It's clear that the Falcons have moved on to Tyler Algier. So if you're in dynasty leagues, I think you're safe cutting Caleb Huntley. There's no real reason to keep him on your squads. He would be nothing more than a grinder, a third or fourth string grinder in any team that would sign him, much less the Atlanta Falcons. So not a fan of Caleb Huntley moving forward, and he's a safe drop in dynasty. Drake London is an interesting player to talk about, because there was good and bad. The good is that he was fifth among all wide receivers in target share. Fifth. He was second in target rate when he was getting snaps, which 87% route participation, right? 79% snap share. He could have bumped that up a little bit, but it's rookie year. You're going to get into 80 plus percent snaps here, but still second in target rate among all wide receivers. 23rd in air yard share, 21st in air yards, 20th in unrealized air yards. You get a better quarterback in the Atlanta Falcons. Drake London is going to crush. 16th in yards per team pass attempt. He's giving wide receiver 2 vibes the whole way. Ceiling T. Higgins vibes, and like high-end wide receiver 2 type of ceiling. Average cushion was 8th best. Fantasy points per route, 14th. Now, this is very interesting. Target rate versus man was 16th, but his target separation versus man only 79th, 1.31 yards. And that's significant because he was getting targets even though he wasn't getting separation. And that is the key for some of these wide receivers that are elite type of talents and elite draft capital, like Drake London, the 8th overall pick in the 2022 draft. And he was just plagued by terrible quarterback play. This is a buy low candidate in your dynasty. How is it hard? It's hard to buy low on the 8th overall pick in your dynasty leagues. But looking at where he's being drafted right now on the way too early underdog drafts for next year. He's being drafted wide receiver 26. Okay, same as Keenan Allen. Give me Drake London for what could happen to Keenan Allen for next year. Give me Drake London over Michael Pittman. We don't know who the Indianapolis Colts are going to be picking up. It's either London or Pittman. Give me the guy who has the better pedigree. Give me Drake London over Terry McLaurin. Okay, for 2023. So that's the tier break where I want to be on a player who's getting extremely high volume. He's a big-bodied wide receiver. He's not just like he's not just Deontay Johnson. Okay, this is not just a target getter. This is a target earner, alpha wide receiver. And we'll look at what he did in some of his game logs. Let's do it. Right? To finish out the year, weeks 13, 15, 16, 17, and 18. His last 5 games, at least 8 targets in every game. Now, granted, he did not eclipse 100 total yards until week 18 in any particular game. How Drake London is a player that we saw some ceiling. We saw him get into that top 10 of wide receiver, and it's just going to improve with improved quarterback play. Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder were outside the top 30 among quarterbacks with 130 more dropbacks. Outside the top 30, both of them in PFF passer grade. Drake London had bad passes thrown to him this year, and it was lower volume. Can we expect Mariota to throw for fewer than 20 passes in 3 separate games? Going to destroy Drake London. So for what it's worth, I'm in on getting Drake London. I think that wide receiver 26 is a decent value right now. I'd probably push him to wide receiver 24, 23. I like some of the ceiling possibility. I do like Christian Watson better in best ball, but I'm also monitoring that quarterback situation. If Aaron Rodgers returns, give me Christian Watson over Drake London in ceiling. But if I'm going season long, I want Drake London over Christian Watson. That's how I'm viewing it, with all things being equal right now. I like Drake London. I think that consensus, the general thought is about right on him, that he's going to have a better season than he had this year. The wide receiver 43 in fantasy points per game. He was wide receiver 31 in total points. So we can get there. We can see the difference there, but we also see that there is immense target earning happening for Drake London. And yes, some of that happened with Kyle Pitts gone, but also some of it happened with Kyle Pitts there, right? Drake London started his career with 5 straight games of at least 6 targets, and all but one of them were 7 or more targets. So yeah, give me Drake London for this year as a wide receiver too. There's good and there's bad about Kyle Pitts. What do you want first? I'll tell you. The good is that among tight ends with 30 or more targets, Kyle Pitts finished as the tight end 8 in PFF receiving grade. And he finished as tight end 11 back in 2021 in fantasy points per game. He did finish as tight end 22 this year in fantasy points per game. We saw a couple ceiling games against Seattle in week 3. He finished as the tight end 6, 13.7 PR fantasy points, 5 for 87, 160 air yards. And then week 8 against Carolina, 5 for 80 and a touchdown, 63 air yards. But what is even more interesting is in week 9 against the Chargers, he only went 2 catches for 27 yards, but he had 209 air yards. 209 air yards. Holy buckets. And then he followed that up in week 10 against Carolina again, 2 for 28, but 97 air yards. It's that his quarterback sucked. He finished the last 5 games of the season with 5 or more targets. And 3 of those games, 7 or more targets. Kyle Pitts is still the tight end that you want him to be. Right now, underdog, he's being drafted as the tight end 4, which I still don't think I can get behind. You're going to be drafting Travis Kelce. You're going to be drafting TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Mark Andrews. I think you're pumping him to 5, maybe Goddard to 6. Okay. I do like Goddard for what it's worth, because Goddard this year was tight end 4 in PFF grade. For those asking at home, who was ahead of Kyle Pitts in PFF receiving grade among tight ends? Well, Kelsey was 1, Okonkwo was 2, Kittle 3, Goddard 4, Andrews 5, Njoku 6, and Freiermuth 7. And just behind Pitts was Hooper, Waller, and Akins and Gerald Everett. And Hawkinson was 13th. But Kyle Pitts fits like in that tier. The problem is that if we don't see a significant shift in quarterback improvement, we could be set up for another disappointing year. You need to be waiting on tight end. And Kyle Pitts is not the type of tight end. I think he's a trap tight end. He's the Dalton Schultz of this past year, right? Like, he is a good player on his own. He has good talent. He has extreme athleticism. But he's being priced wrong in drafts. And if you draft him, you're losing out on significant draft capital for what you are needing from other positions, right? Kyle Pitts this past year, only 8.5% of the time scored 12.5 point PR fantasy points. And yes, that was tight end 19 in rate. But for those counting at home, Kyle Pitts was 20th in fantasy points per game and half. So it's that we need to see a quarterback improvement pretty significantly to justify tight end 4. Do you have confidence? I don't have confidence with the way that Atlanta had been nibbling at quarterback this past year after drafting Kyle Pitts 4th overall, after drafting Drake London 8th overall. But then the Falcons come back and nibble with Mariota and then draft a nibble with Desmond Ridder. Come on. Like, we need to see a Derek Carr there, or we need to see a Lamar Jackson there, or we need to see a significant tier jump upgrade to be able to justify Kyle Pitts being drafted. His ADP right now is 65th overall in the way too early drafts. That's way too early for me. It's either Kelsey or it's bust for me, and I'm going to let other people for right now draft all of the Kyle Pitts. I just can't get behind that value, that return on investment, when if you want to be winning your leagues, you either need to be waiting and hoping you hit on like an Okonkwo and a Taysom Hill and some, because you're not going to hit on a Kyle Pitts, or the chances are that you're not going to hit very well. And the only chance that the only player who returned tight end value for you this year was Travis Kelce, who was a first-round pick, his early second-round pick. And now Kelsey's getting drafted in like the top 6 of picks. So my recommendation is I need to see Kyle Pitts' ADP fall significantly. Like, we're talking rounds and rounds for me to be comfortable taking him. And even then, I don't know if it's worth it for what draft capital I'm investing based on what the coaching staffs have done to address the quarterback position in Atlanta. I can't get behind it. I'm not a fan of it. Give me David Njoku at tight end 7 at virtually the same type of player, an extreme athleticism type of tight end. At least we've seen David Njoku do this a few other times in his career where he's had huge explosion games, extreme athleticism games. Like, give me David Njoku at tight end 7 at value over Kyle Pitts at tight end 4 at value.